Just let me know when the green light, and we're good to go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first virtual ad hoc committee on the 2028 Olympics and Paralympic Games hearing of the year. I am honored to be the new chair of this committee and put in the necessary work to host a worthwhile and very successful 2028 Olympics and Paralympic Games in the city of Los Angeles. We have so much work to do in the next 7 years, and we will elevate the importance of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and we all have our own experiences with the Olympics, whether as an observer or whether as someone who has friends who are Olympians, and we all understand the impact of past Olympics that have been hosted in Los Angeles in 32 and 84. And we also are embracing the opportunities that the 2028 Olympics will provide Angelenos across the city, and the economic impact, that the potential for that, and the importance of making sure that there is equity across the city, and with the youth sports contract that we have fully in operation across the city, we are seeing real positive outcomes with that. We also want to work for an environmentally sound Olympics. We could very well have a zero emissions Olympics. We could have a plastics-free Olympics. So we know that the Olympic Games in 2028 in Los Angeles can really be a watershed moment on many levels, from some of the issues and opportunities that face the entire world right now. And the beauty is that we have 7 years to prepare for the most successful Olympic Games ever. I am grateful today to be joined by my colleagues, Mr. Buscaino, the vice chair of this committee, Ms. Rodriguez, and Mr. Koretz, and we'll be joined by a few others in the coming moments here. Before I turn it over to our clerk to call the roll, I'd like to remind everyone to make sure they're on mute when not speaking. And with that, Mr. White, please call the roll. Mr. White, you're on mute.
Good morning, committee members. I will call the roll. Mr. O'Farrell.
Present.
Mr. Buscaino.
Here.
Ms. Martinez. Mr. Koretz.
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Here.
Mr. Price. Mr. Krikorian. 4 members are in attendance. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. White. It is my understanding that Mr. Price and Ms. Martinez will not be joining us this morning because they have other obligations, but we should be joined shortly by Mr. Krikorian. In a moment, we'll take up to half an hour to hear from members of the public who wish to comment on items specific to today's agenda, and that's items 1 or 2. I will turn it over to our city attorney to explain the speaking rules now to the members of the public who are calling in, and to our city clerk to provide the necessary information for the public to dial in.
Why don't we start with the clerk reading the dial-in information?
All right.
Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 161-516-3969. That's phone number 1-669-254-5252, meeting ID number 161-516-3969, and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak.
So to members of the public who are calling in to speak, when it's your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you'd like to speak on. You'll have 1 minute per item, up to 2 minutes total. Because this is a special meeting, there is no general public comment. You can only speak on the 2 agenda items. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can, and if we can't tell whether you're on topic, or if you're not off topic, you'll get one brief warning from me or the presiding officer, at which point, if you don't get back on topic or you can stray off topic, the presiding officer will cut you off and we'll move on to the next speaker. As Mr. O'Farrell said, we're going to take up to 30 minutes of public comment. Finally, for people who are calling in to speak, as soon as you hear someone address you by reading off the last 4 digits of your phone number or other identifying information if you're on a block number, that means you're live in the meeting and it's your turn to speak. Please immediately press *6 to unmute yourself and tell us which items you'd like to speak on. Because there is a time delay between the live broadcast and between the broadcast and the live meeting, please keep one ear to the phone so that when we address you, you press *6 right away. Otherwise, we may think you're no longer on the line if you're slow getting to us. Finally, also, if you're listening on another device, please turn down the volume on those devices immediately because we'll get feedback and the time delay is going to cause confusion. So we are ready, Mr. Chairman, to take public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Fowle, and thank you, Mr. White. Please, let's bring the first caller in.
Caller with the phone number ending in 5615, please press *6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name's Hans. I'd like to speak on all available items.
Okay, Hans, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. First off, I just want to say I'm truly impressed at not only your ability to ignore the problems of the city, but create new ones that nobody asked for. The Olympics are already forcing outcomes that are against the will of the people, and this proceeding is absolutely absurd. The Olympics mean that the city has to expand its policing and surveillance apparatus with absolutely no regard to public input. So, thumbs up to you guys for giving us 30 whole minutes to talk about this today. But again, this is truly unfortunate. We know that this policing expansion will likely cost over $1 billion, and as this MOU emphasizes, there are currently no funds guaranteed in place. This opens the way for additional city and state funding to be directed towards policing, which is totally unacceptable. I don't know if you've been present during the last year, but you've probably seen people in the streets crying out for alternatives, for defunding, for things that don't involve more police. So the idea that we're going to muster up some faux enthusiasm for athletics and whatever plastic-free Olympics looks like, I think what you really need to hear is that the city is calling for not more, but less policing and to operate under a system which would increase this in any way is truly egregious. So with that, I'd like to yield the remainder of my time.
All right, next caller.
Caller with the phone number ending in 4578, please press *6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, my name is Hamid Khan with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, and I'd like to speak to item 1 and 2.
All right, you have 1 minute for each.
Okay. Well, I think it's for some of us who have seen the impact of post-1984 Olympics on the city of Los Angeles and have been organizing over the last 35, 40 years. It's again, like as Mr. O'Farrell opened this meeting, I assume that was him, that we're looking at sacrificing the well-being of Black, brown, and poor Angelenos at the altar of economic impact. We saw massive sweeps. We saw the National Security Police State using that opportunity to expand oppression, expand surveillance, accumulate new weapons, push boundaries, and justify its violence. We saw how, massive sweeps of unhoused people happened, massive arrests of youth happened. We saw the permanent codification of gang injunctions. We saw Operation Hammer go into effect. We saw Weed and Seed go into effect. All these tactical operations that happened after 1984 Olympics. And then later on, this Clinton-era law of NS, the National Special Event Security Events, I believe, which was passed in 1997, for these special events, is going to further federalize the policing into the city of Los Angeles. This happened after the Olympics in Atlanta, and now what we are going to see is that these special events are designed for political conventions, visits by dignitaries, But what we have is the federalization of a city, where it is almost a temporary martial law, pretty much, that gets imposed, which then leads to suspension of people's rights as well. And here, what we're going to have is in these MOUs, the way they are being framed, that the federal government, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the Secret Service, in supposed partnership with a co-chair, which will be either a law enforcement official or a fire chief, right? So now what happens is that even for yourself, I mean, as a city council, that yes, you have to sign on and you have to rubber stamp this whole thing, but what happens to the representations is completely out the window, because then we will have this policing.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 0785, please press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending, state your name and what items you would like to speak on.
My name is Molly, and I'd like to comment on item 1 and 2.
All right. You have 1 minute for each item.
Yeah, I think that my comments are going to be piggybacking off of the previous comments provided by members of our community. In particular, the incursion of federal forces into Los Angeles for the next decade, as was stated before. You're starting to build up a lot of surveillance and police force and funding that will be extended far beyond the 7 years leading up to LA. We've seen how vulnerable our city immigrant population is to federal police forcing like ICE. And while Trump is no longer in office, Joe Biden has not wound down Trump's deportation machine. And this expands and transfers powers with regards to who polices Los Angeles, which was mentioned before, which means massive uncertainty for this already vulnerable immigrant population, which I know that many politicians claim to find important in Los Angeles. Also, this LA Olympics is the same old Olympics when it comes to policing. The LA Olympics have been pitched as a new type of Olympics, but by having the same people in charge of policing, you are signaling that it isn't. The greatest failure of the 84 games and the most hot-button issue of the moment was racially targeting policing. The Olympics will continue to be an excuse for the militarization of the police and the expansion of an unwanted and unjust surveillance apparatus. Yeah, this is bullshit. Anyways, I yield my time.
All right, next caller.
Caller with the phone number ending in 1718, please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Luke Beischel, items 1 and 2.
All right, you have 1 minute for each item.
Great. I know you guys aren't going to actually listen because you love to take money from developers and line your pockets. And, you know, I'm talking about people who are in charge, like Casey Wasserman, who was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. So this is already corrupt from the beginning. But the fact that you are willing to increase the police that are already in our city with outcries of wanting less police is absolutely outrageous to me. The fact that we're going to add more surveillance, you guys are going to watch the citizens even more. You're going to round up people as you did in 84. It's all just corrupt and horrible. And I hope you guys actually hear us and listen that we do not want these games in Los Angeles. I yield my time.
All right, next caller.
Caller with the phone number ending in 6907. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Annie. I'd like to speak on items 1 and 2.
All right, you have 1 minute for each. Please go ahead.
Thanks. So right now we're in a moment nationally and in the city of LA where the people of this country and the people of this city are demanding to defund the police. And the thing about that is many of the policies that people are protesting now in LA began because of the 1984 Olympics. So what that tells us is that increases in policing are going to last for years. What the Olympics are doing right now is creating an expansion in the role of the police that will last way longer than just 2028. And it's starting now, in a moment when the public is demanding less policing. And actually, many of the LAPD tactics and tools that the community has been protesting against today originated in those 84 Olympics. Those include massive sweeps and criminalization of unhoused people who didn't have anywhere else to go, and that's starting now. 84 also created massive gang sweeps, resulting in mass arrests of young people, and that then became a policy of gang injunction that has been discredited by this point. On top of that, the Olympics are going to create an NSSE, which is going to just transfer a bunch of power to the federal government, which, as we've seen, is a deportation machine for Black and brown youth. And in general, the Olympics are coming here in order to launder in all of this increase in policing, and there's no oversight from the people. And we're just here to tell you, like, we're watching, and this is not okay. We need to cancel the Olympics. Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 1718, please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending in 1718, please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending in 3892, please press *6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hey, my name is Eric Chevron, and I'm speaking on 1 and 2.
All right, you have 1 minute for each. Please go ahead.
Hey, yeah, so I'm calling on 1 and 2, and I'm echoing what everyone else is saying here. It seems a little odd that there's only 4 of you here, and there's no one to speak in support of more policing. And just like all the other callers here, you know, you're here for an event that's going to, just like in 1984, solidify millions of dollars of militarization of policing with no input from, barely any input from the public. An NSSE event is not going to be, an NSSE event has no transparency and will lead to arrests of people that is an NSSE event is one of the most draconian and dangerous things that can happen to people in Los Angeles. Yet we are going to put a blanket of surveillance, a blanket of militarization, and a blanket of security over the city for what, a 3-week party for Mitch O'Farrell, so Councilman Joe Buscaino can go party with the former king of Greece. Think about what you're doing here when we're trying to get the Olympics here. The amount of security and the amount of surveillance needed that these Olympics bring, that they need are unbelievable, and they're going to ruin the city, and they're gonna ruin people's lives. So when you talk about surveillance, and when you talk about these NSSE events, think about who you're impacting.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 6262, please press *6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name's Anne. I'd like to speak on items 1 and 2.
Okay, you have 1 minute for each. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just to really echo and drive home the points that have been made by all of the other folks on the line, and also
echoing the fact that every single person is speaking out against this, and we have no illusions that this is going to be anything but rubber stamped through. You know, these NSSEs and these, you know, the expansion of police militarization and collusion between local and federal law enforcement, the privatization of policing and surveillance, we've seen happen in every city that's hosted the Olympics. The NSSE is particularly dangerous in the U.S. There's only been one other Olympics that's had them, which is Salt Lake City. And what we've continued to see over, you know, the last 20 years, just how expansive and extensive the harm was from that. We saw the NSA use the Salt Lake City Olympics in 2002 as an opportunity to basically test drive what it would look like to conduct mass blanket indiscriminate surveillance on an entire city. And so the idea that you all are sitting here on casually at 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and as many folks have mentioned, within the last year where there has just been massive international protest and backlash around exactly this type of thing, is pretty dissonant and mind-blowing, honestly. And I don't think it's an accident that two folks just happen to be unavailable for this conversation. You know, I think this is really a moment where we are paying attention. The citizens, the residents of the city are paying attention to what you all are standing up for and doing. And I hope it's clear that you can't just casually discuss and pass this through. You're going to be held accountable for these decisions and what it means for folks in the city, particularly the folks who are the most vulnerable, who are still suffering from the impact of the, you know, militarized, massive police
Thank you. That's been 2 minutes. Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 7299, please press star 6 to unmute. State your name.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on items 1 and 2, please.
Okay, your name, and you have 1 minute for each.
Sure, my name is Eric Sheehan. I'm with the group of folks who've been calling you today, and I'm not going to make any new points. You've heard a number of reasons why we should not be hosting these games. I'm just going to suggest that maybe you think about, you know, the progressive cred you might get for taking a bold step, like canceling the Olympics. COVID and the massive crisis that we're dealing with right now is giving you cover for that. And I know there's no real political will to not do these games, but imagine how cool you would look in liberal circles if you shut down the Olympics, which is going to cause massive destruction and displacement for folks who live in your city. Just think about that.
Caller with the phone number ending in 8672, please press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending in 8672, please press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending in 5615, please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hey, I actually already gave comment. I'm not sure if there's an issue with the system. I'm happy to give another comment reminding you why the Olympics is terrible, but I don't want to take up time for other people.
Someone else comment, but thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 6262, please press star 6 to unmute.
Already spoke.
My name is Ann. I also gave public comment already, like the previous caller. I'm happy I could talk probably all day about why expanding policing is.
Make sure that you press star 9 to request to speak, and that'll probably help clear some of the confusion here. So please press star 9 to request to speak, and you'll be let in. And we're joined by Mr. Krikorian.
Caller with the phone number ending in 1125. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Johnny. I'm going to speak on items 1 and 2.
Okay.
Hi, Mr.
All right, hi, Mr. Krikorian. I don't know if you've been paying attention to Tokyo, but they're about $30 billion over, and I thought that might be of interest to you. But I have a couple little anecdotes about LA Olympic history that no one at City Hall we talk to ever seems to know about. So I wanted to make sure you all are well aware of these things. One was in regards to the 1932 Olympics. I'm curious if anyone knows on this council why the LAPD Academy is where it is located. The simple answer is because of the 1932 Olympics, because they allowed for special permitting for the use of rifles. One thing led to another, and now we have one of the largest police academies in the world right there. You know, that's not an accident. Another story is related to the 1984 Olympics, because I'm sure you're going to ignore all these comments and focus on equity, quote unquote. But in the 1984 Olympics, the equity was promised to black and brown small business owners, and they got fucking screwed. They sued the city after they went bankrupt, after these bad deals weren't honored by the IOC, and they won for millions of dollars. So millions of our taxpayer dollars went to honoring the equity that was never served in the first place. Meanwhile, their communities were being terrorized by police like the LAPD on steroids. Finally, I want to just mention that the 1984 Olympics also gifted us the Lady of the Lake at Echo Park. And I know Councilmember O'Farrell has specific designs in cleaning up the unhoused populations that live there. And I know that with the Olympic tools in his toolkit, that will be a lot easier. And we're here to say that that's not going to happen, and that you all need to think about seriously canceling the Olympics now.
Mr. Chair, there are no more speakers in the queue.
All right, thank you so much. So that does conclude the public comment then. Now we will move on to item 1. Mr. White, if you would please read item 1.
Item 1 is a CAO and CLA report relative to the Third Amendment to MOU C129859 between the City of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Organizing Committee for the Olympic and Paralympic Games 2028, and the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, extending the date for executing the Games Agreement from March 14th, 2021 to October 1st, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. White. So what we have before us is a third amendment to the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games Agreement. This extension will enable us to continue negotiations for the agreement. Some of the callers called it rubber stamping what we're doing today, but actually the opposite is what we're doing, providing an extension of time to continue negotiating a better agreement for the residents of Los Angeles. That is literally what we're doing by extending this deadline. So we have today with us the departments who are going to elaborate on what some of these amendments mean, who are before us, that are before us today. So if we could elaborate, even though it's stated in the report, just elaborate a little bit on what is causing the delay in finalizing the Games Agreement. And I believe, I'm not sure who is on the queue to answer these questions. Is it you, Mr. Wickham?
Actually, Alex Whitehead from the CLA's office is here to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, committee members. My name is Alex Whitehead with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. This extension became necessary as the result of the continued impacts of COVID-19 and associated delays and limitations that are constraining the negotiations. We're trying to iron out all the specifics to achieve ideal sustainability, efficiency, security, and equity for the Games. And we just have more technical issues to clarify to iron out the municipal services that would be provided, et cetera, and how those would come together.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Now, does this extension affect any of the other timelines or deadlines that may be lurking that we need to be aware of?
There shouldn't be any associated negative impact. There's no specific hard deadline that this Games Agreement needs to come to fruition just as soon as possible so we can have the Games come together as soon as possible.
Can you elaborate on any of the items in the MOU that really stand out that are yet to be negotiated or finalized in negotiations?
Not on a specific level. It's mostly discussing the municipal services and how those are going to be provided on a specific level and what level they would be provided as an extended providing of these services beyond the normal, trying to create those baselines.
Thank you. And is there a point at which the 2028 Games agreement absolutely needs to be solidified before we start running into delays or impacting the progression of making sure that we negotiate the best, safest, more equitable games?
There's no hard and fast deadline with this, but the sooner the better, because as we get closer to the games, we start running into more and more specifics that we need to iron out, and we need to have a games agreement in place for those.
Right. It'll be important that we have the blessing of time, but we want to make sure that we don't grow complacent in making sure that we have adequate sense of urgency to get all of these elements in order so that we can have a successful games. All right, thank you so much. And colleagues, questions? Questions or concerns from anyone? It looks like we don't have, so that's absolutely fine. And LA 2028, anything to add to this? I know we have several representatives from LA 2028 with us this morning. Anything that anyone would like to add, please do speak up.
Hi, this is Brian Nelson. I'm LA 28's Chief Legal Officer. I'm so glad to be with you this morning. And in that role, I look after a portfolio that it includes the privilege to work closely with our city and our governmental partners. On just this item, I would just note and really make 2 points. One is being thankful for the collaborative working relationship we've had in negotiating the games agreement to date. And to your point, Councilmember O'Farrell, this will give us more time to really create an agreement that I think everyone will be really proud to stand behind and will set us up to deliver a great games in 28. And the second point is just on the timing point, we are still, for better, I think, outside of that traditional 7-year organizing window. So we do have that luxury of time. So October 1st, that time frame would actually sort of be the beginning of that traditional 7-year window. So I think that timing will be a good opportunity to set the relationship between us and the city up for, like I said, a really successful games delivery.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Really glad to hear those comments. And any other comments from the CLA or CEO's office? Seeing as there are none, then let's please call the roll, Mr. Clerk, on item number 1.
Item 1, recommendation is to approve the recommendation of the CAO-CLA report. Mr. O'Farrell.
Aye.
Mr. Buscaino.
Aye.
Mr. Koretz.
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Aye.
And Mr. Krikorian.
Aye.
The matter passes. Recommended for approval.
Thank you, Mr. White. Let's please go on to item number 2.
Item 2 is a CAO and CLA report relative to a 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games Public Safety Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Organizing Committee for the Olympic and Paralympic Games 2028, and the California Office of Emergency Services to establish the California Olympic and Paralympic Public Safety Command.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, back in 2019, the governor signed AB 1754, which established the California Olympic and Paralympic Public Safety Command, known as the Cooperative. The Cooperative will be responsible for facilitating the planning, resourcing, management, and delivery of safety and security for the 2028 Games in Los Angeles. The MOU we're authorizing today incorporates the City of Los Angeles into the MOU with the California Office of Emergency Services. and LA 2028, as well as identifies the co-chairpersons of the cooperative and establishes an executive council of the cooperative. And it's worth noting here that the main focus of a host city for the Olympics is to have security in place to prevent terrorism, international or domestic. And in these times, this security cooperative is going to be very important in many ways. And I think of greatest importance is that this cooperative is informed by the city of Los Angeles. And today, what we're going to discuss is the city of Los Angeles making sure that we assert that the local input will loom large in the security apparatus for the 2028 Olympics. And with that, I believe we have staff from the CLA and CO again to go over this report, as well as Mr. Nelson and Doug Arno from the LA 2028 and Shannon Enix from the LAPD present. So let's start with CLA and CO to go over the report.
Well, good morning, members. This is John Wickham with the CLA's office. Before you is a CLA-CAO report presenting the proposed MOU to join the collaborative. This would be an entity comprised of 3 participants: Cal OES, City of Los Angeles, and LA 28. It sets up co-chairs where the City of Los Angeles and Cal OES would be co-chairs of the collaborative. And it sets up a process whereby the 3 participants are required to unanimously consent to the actions of the collaborative. So this ensures that everybody is on the same page as we're moving forward with policies that are developed and with funding requests that are put forward. At some point, and the whole intent of this is to try and get this collaborative process going now, as early as possible, so that by the time we get to the point of requiring the federal participation in security services through the NSSE, we've already got a process in place where local government is involved, local government is organized, and we have, we're ready to bring in federal partners on the process. The collaborative will grow over time. As you know, the Olympic Games will be not just in the city of Los Angeles, but several other cities in California, as well as several counties. So there are a wide range of public service agencies that will be security agencies that will be involved in providing security for the games. And so this is really an opportunity for California to work together to get the planning in place early. It's important also to note that the collaborative does not eliminate or override local public safety policies, and nor does the NSSE. So this is not giving up any control over our police department or our fire department, our security services. This is strictly about working together to ensure that all of the parties involved know where we're going and ensure security and safety of the public when the games arrive.
Thank you, Mr. Wickham. It sounds to me like the more we lean in early and often and now, the more we empower our voice in this collaborative conversation. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Nelson, would you like to weigh in here?
Yes, I'll be brief. I mean, Mr. Wickham expressed it perfectly. I would just say we're really excited to represent LA 28 today as we continue a process that we believe will help us plan, resource manage, and then ultimately deliver an amazing 2028 games that will be safe, not only for the athletes on the field, the fans in the stands, but also for all of our neighbors. And it is a process under the city's leadership we know will reflect and we hope really model the highest standards for public safety and community engagement. The overall goal, as Mr. Wickham said, of this cooperative agreement is really to allow for early game safety planning and coordination between us, the city, the state, as well as other local and federal agencies. This model is really based on a planning model that was successfully utilized ahead of those 2002 Winter Games in Salt Lake City. And this early coordination among key stakeholders will also, as Mr. Wickham noted, underpin what we think will be a really seamless transition to the federal national special security event framework that will be implemented ahead of the 28 games. You know, that framework really allows for government agencies at the federal, state, and local level to plan, implement, and coordinate safety for events of national significance, such as the Olympic and Paralympic Games. But as Mr. Wickham noted, in no way supplants or displaces authorities by any of those jurisdictions or agencies. And this cooperative agreement before you today will really allow LA 28, the city and the state, and our other key partners to enter that planning period, the National Special Security Event planning period, having already aligned on our principles and our values, on a safety plan, on our major roles and responsibilities, and on all of our other critical policies and procedures. And this in turn will allow the federal government to more efficiently allocate federal resources to support a safe games experience for everyone. I would just end by saying, as always, the city's points of contact have really led a great collaborative process to produce this cooperative agreement before you today. We are just so deeply thankful for the leadership, and look forward to continuing to partner with the committee, the full council, the mayor, and other city leaders in preparation for LA to host the world at the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2028. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brian. And I know we have Ms. X from the LAPD present, and we would love to hear from you as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I'm here representing the LAPD. I'm also joined by Deputy Chief Robert Marino, who has been leading our working group internally. And what we'd like to focus on today is answering any questions you have or concerns you might have regarding this particular agreement with ourselves, Cal OES, and LA 28.
Thank you so much. I'll just start with a few brief questions, and then we can, of course, open it up. Do you anticipate knowing factually the subsequent agreements that may occur as a result of approving this report that may involve other jurisdictions, public safety agencies, et cetera, in joining the cooperative? Can we corner yet?
Mr. Chairman, in regards to your question regarding the other public agencies that are going to be joining this cooperative, as indicated by Mr. Wickham and Mr. Nelson, this is the framework. The framework that we're building right now is to institute the incident command system structure, so we can start organizing and developing not only our planning, our community outreach, our education, and training in preparation for these games. As this gets developed, the other agencies will be brought into this collective in this MOU, and we will be developing and institutionalizing the safety and security of each of these events. And the ultimate goal, as everybody's indicated today, is for the safety and security of the participants, the city, as well as the spectators.
So Chief, do you see the city of Los Angeles being at the center of the framework for that incident command structure?
Sir, as part of the cooperative, one of the three leads or people part of that collective is going to be either the chief of police, the chief of fire, or an appointee by the mayor. LAPD is one of the larger jurisdictions within the game agreement, and part of our idea or part of our desire is being part of the structure of this organization in the planning and safety and security of these events. The department has a great history in working with partnerships with the fire department, our major incidents and planning in working through the ICS structure in dealing with major incidents throughout the city. So this is just another example of how we will work together in achieving the goal of the cooperative and of the city in providing a safe and secure event once the Olympics get here.
And as far as the ultimate executive decision during the games, where do you see that decision making coming from?
Well, as indicated, the NSSE will, it's normally a year to 2 years prior to the start of the games. The NSSE will come into the structure of the organization of this cooperative. And at that time, I believe an MOU will be, I don't know the exact process on how that takes over, but we will be part of that executive committee in the planning and developing of the safety and security for those games.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would imagine that recent events at the federal level and unforeseen events in the not so distant future will further inform the security approach to the games. So I appreciate that. Colleagues, Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to everyone who presented. I think Chief Marino already kind of anticipated my questions, and I'm satisfied that what we have now is really a framework for working out the additional details that I was going to ask about. But as we do move forward, I do just want to comment that one of the things that I think will be particularly important to this committee and that I'll be focusing a lot of my attention on is appropriate cost allocation among the various agencies, because this is not a City of Los Angeles Olympics, of course. This is a regional Olympics with regional needs, security needs, and regional costs. And this should not be borne by the City of Los Angeles inequitably. So I'll be looking to see how we do that. And then similar to that, more operationally, some of the callers who called in today raised concerns that we all need to take seriously about how law enforcement responds to demonstrations, for example, how law enforcement engages in crime prevention investigation, and so forth. And each of the agencies that will be involved in this has somewhat different policies and protocols. Los Angeles Police Department doesn't operate necessarily the same as Long Beach Police or, the Pomona Police Department. And so in a unified command structure, I think it'll be important for this committee to fully understand how will those policies be determined and, which policies prevail in a case where there's differences between agencies, among agencies. So I don't think anybody is probably prepared to give a detailed response to those issues, but perhaps you can respond generally as to how we would approach that, and then we'll look to greater details as we get into the MOU.
So this is John Wickham with the CLA. First off, the games agreement that we had discussed in the previous item addresses certain issues related to city-borne costs. So we will be bringing forward to you, when that comes back by October 1st, our approach on how to ensure that the city is reimbursed for its costs. And there is a concept of the existing services being maintained in the city, and then additional costs borne as a result of the games. And so we will need to be looking at that and making sure that there's appropriate allocation, as you say. In addition, one of the effects of an NSSE is to bring additional federal money to compensate for the costs of the games and security. And so we will need to pay very close attention to that to make sure, again, that there's an appropriate allocation and full cost recovery to the best that we can achieve to make sure that we're not out of pocket for those costs. I don't know if Brian has any additional information on that.
Oh, the only thing I would add to your point is this is a process that should provide both the opportunity to establish that framework in a way that makes sense for all of our partners beyond the city of Los Angeles, but obviously federal, state, and the other local jurisdictions that will host games events. And we have that this sort of early planning period to really make sure that we can invest in doing that work together with the city of Los Angeles, one. And then the second, really the only second point I would make is that this process will obviously also allow for us to hear from other community stakeholders and other stakeholders who will be interested about how we are modeling and really creating a games plan that promotes safety, again, for beyond sort of the athletes and the fans, but really for the entire community, which is a principle and a value that's really important, I think, to all of us as we work through these issues.
Thank you. Great points. There will be much more discussion about local input for security at these games. Thank you. And Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for the presentation. It's more of a comment than a question, and it's largely because the world can be a tremendously different place by the time 2028 arrives. And so it's important that we kind of remain obviously engaged in very deep dialogue with all of the partners that are going to help assure public safety through this process. That said, I would also remind us all of, and Mr. Buscaino was there, some of the concerns that were raised by members of the International Olympic Committee at the tripartite agreement based on things at the national level like the Muslim ban. And so, we have to work very closely in monitoring the kind of national narratives that could really upend the work that we're doing here locally. And I think it's just really important for us to remain very focused on and aware and sensitive to those national narratives. And, again, I feel vastly more comfortable where we are today than where we were 4 years ago. But that's not to say what might be by the time 2028 comes. So I just want to, have us all be aware of that as a city of sanctuary, as a city that has, recognizes the vast contributions and takes policing in a very different manner and public safety in a very different approach. It's not adopted perhaps at the same levels in other areas. And so I think it's just very important for us to remain a strong influence in that as we approach 2028. And so I look forward to our continued work and conversation in this. Again, it feels like a lifetime away, especially with leadership changes that will inevitably be coming by the time the games arrive. But I just wanted to make that comment to apprise, just kind of always maintain that at the forefront of our thinking. But again, my thanks to everybody in this work.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a multi-part question. And the first part of the question is, what are the different roles of different entities that we're anticipating? What's the role of the federal government? What's the role of the state in this? What's the role of other local governments? And I would ask this with an eye towards the LAPD and their role. We have seen record attrition in recent months. We've seen cuts to the department. We've seen calls for reductions, which some members of the council have probably been more open to than others, and unclear how much further they could be reduced. Is this department stretched too thin, and could it be stretched even thinner by 2028 so that we would need to be thinking ahead and be more reliant on other entities? And should we be thinking about asking for more help from the National Guard when the Olympics are held and other such things? Not commenting or putting an opinion in on whether this should be happening, but it is happening. This is a department that's already smaller than it was, just a year ago. So where does that all fit in? And that's sort of my first multi-part question.
Who wants this one? Chief?
Sure. Let me see if I can answer some of your questions, Mr. Brett. In regards to where the department is right now, as indicated by Lieutenant White, we're, a small group of us have formed and are working with not only LA 2028, but also our partners over at FIRE in regards to the development of the structure of this MOU, of this command, to ensure that we're following the ICS structure that's been developed and trusted and utilized at many events throughout the city as well as the nation. The answer to forecast on where the department's going to be in 7 years, I don't have that answer, and I can't give you an answer on that because I don't want to speculate on anything. But in regards to the organization and what our purpose is right now, is we're coming together as an organization to be to ensure that we're looking at training, looking at planning, looking at the logistical needs of organizing for the safety and security of these games. We're looking at the resources at hand, and then once we get together and we're developed as a group and moving forward, then we'll be able to forecast in regards to the number of personnel that might be needed, the impact on the department resources, as well as fire resources on what we're doing. And looking at the past games, officers were deployed, the use of reserves, use of volunteers. We look at the national large stadium structure on how those are organizing. We're in the infancy stage right now on how we're going to get there and what we're going to use to get there. And like I indicated, it's all going to fall back on the ICS structure, on the way that's organized and moves forward to achieve the safety and security of the events. So I hope that answers your question. Shannon, if you want to add anything.
Just to speak to that a little bit more, I think that what we're looking at is an opportunity once we get through establishing this cooperative to work together to better understand what venues are going to be needed, what the security plan looks like with them. LA 28 has very kindly offered to sit down with us and work through what they believe are ideal numbers of security personnel for each venue and give us a better understanding of how those events lay out over the course of the weeks that we'll be hosting the games. And getting that understanding will very much help us in coming back to this ad hoc committee and reporting on what do the numbers really look like. There is a commitment on the part of the department to continue to maintain standard services across the city so that when somebody's calling 911, they don't have delayed responses as a result of us securing the games. And there's also already discussion about what are our alternatives. So we have options in place based off the size of the department at the time, which we know we can't absolutely know today what it will be 7 years from now, but so that we can start putting action plans in place that represent everybody's varied needs, whether it's LA 28 with the game specifically or the rest of the communities across the city with making sure that they still receive proper service.
Yeah, I just would encourage that we include the worst case scenario in terms of LAPD staffing. So, we're not planning on 10,000 officers and we've found that we have fewer. Again, not saying that I think this is a good idea, but it so far is reality. The other thing I wanted to ask about is safety from a public health perspective. We're obviously dealing with COVID. Some think that it could be another 4 to 5 years before we achieve true herd immunity. And it starts to completely disappear. We don't know what else may come as in the future that may be similar. Are we looking at that in terms of what could happen and how we keep things as safe and sanitary as possible?
At the current time, we haven't. Oh, sorry. John, did you want to go?
I was actually going to suggest that Brian might have some thoughts. I know that LA 28 has been monitoring Tokyo. I mean, Tokyo is actually a city going through this immediately in real time. And so I know that there's a great deal of discussion among cities that are involved in the Olympics who are hosting in the future in cooperation and in their collaborative opportunities to learn from their experiences. And Brian might have some information on what we can learn from Tokyo and their experience right now.
I'll be super brief on that point, which is only to say, actually Tokyo, from our understanding and the public reporting, and what we hope to learn later this summer when the games happen, has actually taken a lot of the learnings from our sports leagues across the country on how to hold safe large events in the context of our pandemic, which just goes to the point. We have this. This obviously this horrible crisis that we're all experiencing, but we will learn a lot from how Tokyo conducts the games, and we've already learned a lot from how sports leagues across our country have conducted their large-scale events, and we have great connectivity into those leagues, and have been in constant conversation with them as we progress through this pandemic. So we continue to take advantage of the additional time that we have and the opportunity for those learnings, again, which we will obviously roll up as we prepare to deliver the games in 28.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Ms. Rodriguez, did you have anything else to add? Okay, all right. Thank you. So, Lieutenant White, Chief Marino, thank you so much.
Your hand up. Sorry.
Mr. Nelson, Mr. Buscaino, please go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and thank you for the presentation. You're not going to be surprised where I'm coming from, because I've always valued and prioritized safety and security here in our city, and this will not change. Moving forward, I'm going to be, demanding that we prioritize safety and security for the LA 28 games, and I will encourage all levels of government as it relates to public safety resources and the organizing committee. My message to you is don't police on the cheap. And this is why. If you look at the terrorist attacks in Munich in 1972, here in Atlanta in 1996, Beijing 2008, the non-terrorist attack leading up to the Mexico City Games in 1968, 300 protesters killed. It's important, and I'm happy to move forward on this MOU, but also to Mr. Krikorian's point, this is, an equitable deployment of resources at all levels of government, and not just LAPD. We're going to be looking at deploying, the ICS system, unified command presence at all levels of government, intelligence gathering at all levels, uniform presence that's going to be critical in this entire region. To Ms. Rodriguez's point, doing so, constitutional policing that is no stranger to LAPD, and we expect our neighboring agencies to move to do the same as we ensure safe and secure games in 28. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Marino or Lieutenant White. Any response to Mr. Buscaino's comments?
Just as I appreciate his comments and support not only what he's saying, but in regards to the engagement and commitment by this department for the safety and security, and also in working with our partners is very important as we move forward with these games.
Great, thank you. All right. I see no further comments or questions. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations and your answers to the questions. Really appreciate it. These dialogues will continue as we move these items forward, and we will continue negotiating a better agreement for the residents of Los Angeles, and we look forward to that. So with this, item number 2, colleagues, I'd like to now move to approve this report.
Second.
Mr. White, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Councilmember Koretz.
Aye.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Krikorian.
Aye.
The matter passes.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And do we have any other items before this committee this morning?
No, sir.
Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.